Welcome to the Exhibit A podcast.
Hello and welcome to Exhibit A. Today we're going to talk about some fun things. Just so you know, I am not somebody who watches the TV looking for celebrity gossip. I don't read People magazine. Not that it isn't a worthy publication. It's just that's something that I'm not particularly interested in. But like a lot of people, as a family law attorney, I am interested in some of the celebrity cases. And today we are going to have a panel discussion concerning some of the cases that are in the news and that we might be able to add to it with our legal analysis and maybe be a little bit entertaining. So first of all, let me introduce the panel discussion of this very important topic. First of all, Stephanie, how are you today?
Hi, everyone. I'm great. Thank you, Don.
I can't wait. Which case are you going to talk about today?
I'll be talking about, it's not officially a divorce yet, but it's looming. So it'll be Kim Kardashian and Kanye West.
Okay. I'm really looking forward to talking about that one. There's so much that could be said about what would happen in family court. Also with us is Monet K. Monet, how are you today?
Doing great. Thanks, Don.
I know you're really busy, so thanks for taking the time out. You've got a lot of things that you're trying to do today. And so spending some time talking about this, I hope will be a relief for you.
Oh, yeah. It's always a pleasure being on the podcast.
Okay. And also with us is Brooke. Brooke, you got one of my favorite all-time celebrities that you're going to be talking about today. Who's that?
That is Robert De Niro, or maybe you're talking about his actress wife, Grace Hightower.
No, I'm sorry. I'm talking about Robert. Are you talking to me? You know, I love the guy, but I've been watching, and I think that with your further analysis, you're probably going to educate me even more about what the issues are. So let's start off with Stephanie. Stephanie, let's talk about your case, and could you set up the facts and the general information that the public would know about?
Yeah, so Kim and Kanye were married in California around 2014. They have about 4 kids, I believe, 4 little kids. There's a huge estate, multiple homes, multiple businesses. From my review of the case, I think there's, 3 major questions in this case. We've all seen Kanye kind of going off the rails a little bit.
Can we use the term meltdown or having a moment?
The perfect word.
Okay.
With his Twitter rants and, everyone knows he has bipolar disorder and he's struggling right now. So if one of them were to file for divorce, would he actually have the capacity to reach some sort of resolution? In family law, we do touch upon some conservatorship issues. And I think this would probably be the case for conservatorship, if one has not been appointed already. For Kanye, it would probably be some sort of mental health LPS conservatorship. Through that, they could also appoint someone to handle his estate, his financial matters, meaning they could be responsible throughout the divorce. If they were to sign some sort of divorce decree, Kanye would be bound by that. If this were to be, obviously we don't think Kanye is going to agree to this. He's the kind of person that's going to fight this. So it'd probably be a contested issue in court, I think. So I think that's the first major issue.
Okay. So let me ask you a question. So from what I saw in the news is that he ran for the presidency and one of his great speeches with his large crowd, he started kind of having a meltdown and got very personal and teary-eyed.
Yeah.
Started talking about possibly divorcing his beautiful wife. And the next thing you know, it's blown up in the press. So I think that everybody thinks that there may be, a time where he is more stable, than others. It didn't look like while he was addressing his crowd that was one of those moments. He was definitely having, some kind of an episode, right?
Right.
So, it just brings up a kind of a sad note is that, people that have mental disorders are not bad people, right? And they really deserve the love of theup their families and their spouses sometimes, are just incredible, how they hang with them. Doesn't it seem like Kim has kind of stayed with him for a long time in spite of these difficulties, right?
Yeah, she recently came out with a statement saying, she supported her husband and she would, request some sort of allowing them to have some alone time to talk these issues through without the public intervening. So it does kind of seem like she's still supporting him. Maybe they'll work it out. Maybe there won't be a divorce, but.
Yeah, so I'd like to see your feedback, Brooke and Monet. I mean, let's start with Brooke. I've seen a lot of cases come my way where you would think that they're going to get a divorce, and next thing you know, if they've reconciled, then you never hear from them again. What do you think about the possibilities of this case being one of those?
Well, unfortunately, it seems like Kanye deals with an episode maybe every few years. It seems like Kim is usually standing with him. So I could see this not ending in divorce, because I think maybe this is just a pattern that's happening until they can figure out the best way to take care of Kanye. I think it's very admirable what Kim is doing. She flew up to Wyoming to be with him. I bet they will stay married. But if I were her, I would be very interested in what this could mean for their finances. I assume that they have a pretty ironclad prenup, so it might not be relevant to this case specifically. But if you were in, the average family where finances might not be covered with a prenup, what do you do when you can't trust that your spouse is going to be making the best choices for himself and for the family? That's a hard question.
Yeah. So, Monica, what do you have to add to this lovely story?
I think what's more likely to happen is she'll probably get a legal separation from him instead of a divorce. I think that she will do that and hang on to it until push comes to shove and until she can't, I don't want to say control, but until she can't deal with this anymore. Obviously, it's a strain on her marriage. And I think what's likely to happen is that she's going to go back and get a really tighter ironclad post-nuptial agreement and really kind of look at her finances and his finances and really see and protect herself. I think that she's really savvy. She's really business savvy. So I would imagine if she's meeting with divorce lawyers, it's probably about a post-nuptial thing or trying to get something tighter in her finances. Brooke is right. They do have a really solid prenup. So she's probably looking and making sure that she's going to be protected. Her finances are going to be protected. I think he gifted her like $1 million worth of stocks over Christmas one time. And, she's probably just going to go through and make sure that everything looks A-okay on her end.
Okay. I should say this for our audience is that we are just speculating. We're just fans out here. We're not talking as if we know these stories or, that we've consulted with these people. So just be mindful of that as we're having this discussion. So Stephanie, Monet K just talked about a legal separation, that this is possibly a legal separation. How do you think that would benefit the parties if it was that rather than a divorce?
I don't really know if it would benefit the parties. I mean, they would have the option of not dealing with the financial issues, which if there is a prenup would govern them anyways. So the really outstanding issue would probably be custody, right? Like they have 4 little kids. That would probably be a hotly contested matter. Kanye's really bonded with them. Kim's really bonded with them. They travel a lot. The current pandemic, worsening pandemic. The only difference between the legal separation and the dissolution would be that they would still remain technically married people. They would not be returned as to single people. That's what I would think.
Yeah, but I think it would protect Kim with respect to the finances because it would sever marital property rights, and there'd be a settlement of what they are, and then they continue to be married, but not worrying about whether or not he's running up the credit cards or whatever gazillionaires do out these days.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one story. Let's talk about Robert De Niro. Now, I want to say this is that I read the paper every morning. Or what used to be the paper, it's on the internet now, and I look at stories that are interesting. De Niro's is an interesting one because he's going through a pretty tough divorce. At least he seems like he's going through a tough one because the press is hovering around him while he's over at the courthouse. He seems like he's kind of grumpy. So, Brooke, tell us what's going on with that case.
Yes, so just a background, Robert and Grace were married in 1997. They have 2 children. One is still a minor. She's 8 or 9. They actually separated sometime in 1999 and then got back together at some point. And in 2004, they renewed their vows. It was also at that time that it looks like they signed a post-nup agreement, which is interesting. It's hard to know exactly what's going on, obviously, since we're not their attorneys. But what I could figure out is basically Robert De Niro has cut her Amex allowance from $100,000 to $50,000. That's per month. I think it was done unilaterally, which is why we're in this situation. A lesser known fact that's not being reported as much is she's also saying that he is banning her from one of their homes. And I haven't been able to find any information on what the child support obligations are. So at this point, we're just talking about spousal support. The cutting of the Amex allowance is why they went to court. His argument is that as part of their post-nup, he is required to pay her $1 million a year so long as he is making $15 million or more a year. If his income declines, his payments to her also proportionately decline. Obviously, we have not seen the post-nup, so I can't say this is for sure what is in there, but that's the basis that they're using to say what he did was right. She, or through her lawyers, the argument she is making is he is worth an admitted worth of $500 million and makes on average $30 million a year. And all of a sudden with COVID in, 3 months of 2020, he needs to cut down his spousal support by 50% and ban her from the house, which is a compelling argument, I think. His main issue is that he owns a lot of restaurants, and so a lot of his finances are tied up in restaurants, which we all know are not doing so well. He says that he will be, or his attorney, I should say, has said that he will be very lucky if he makes $7 million this year. I would like to be that lucky as well. Yeah, but I guess one of his restaurants, Nobu, lost $3 million in April, and then a further $1.87 million in May. And De Niro has been forced to borrow money from business partners to pay investors on a capital call because he doesn't have the cash. So a lot of factors are going on here. I think where he might have shot himself in the foot was by cutting the Amex allowance somewhat unilaterally. He probably should have gone to the court and gotten an order, but it is taking place in New York, and New York is in, their courts have been in a worse situation than our LA courts, so maybe he couldn't have gotten in.
That's true. The old saying is, though, show me a man who is getting divorced and I'll show you the man who has a loss of income and is suddenly poor, right?
Yeah.
I think in usual or normal circumstances, we might think that about Robert, but I mean, realistically, the entertainment industry has taken a huge hit and the restaurant business has taken a hit, and so, I think people like that are getting more credit with the courts. The courts are giving them more time and really be considering their arguments more than before.
Well, and they did get a temporary order, I should have mentioned. De Niro was ordered to give her $75,000 so she could find a summer home because he's banning her from the summer home. And the judge is allowing De Niro to keep the credit card limit at $50,000, saying that $50,000 seems to be certainly enough to avoid irreparable harm, which is probably a fair point.
Okay. I heard rumors around that, he wasn't, a great businessman. They didn't have any money and stuff. And then suddenly the divorce opens up and you realize this guy is like a very rich man. Yeah. And I think it's interesting because he can't stand Donald Trump, and I don't want to get political or anything like that, but he's one of the loudest voices out there. And he's almost as rich as Donald Trump is, and stuff. I mean, it's interesting.
I think he banned Trump from Nobu at one point. He sent out a statement saying nobody from a Trump affiliated campaign and his family can come and dine at Nobu. He took a very hard stance.
Oh my God. So he's part of the millionaires club, the multimillionaires club. Okay.
Yeah, I kind of feel for Bobby. I feel a little bit for him.
Why?
The motion picture industry was completely shut down for a few months. So any sort of production was shut down. Any movies were delayed. They're probably not really starting back up anytime soon. So in addition to his failing businesses.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Dawn.
No, you go.
Well, just playing devil's advocate a little bit, I agree with you, but this isn't some, new rising star. This is a guy who's been in Hollywood for, I don't even know how long. I would think maybe if, the American people, we're supposed to be helping ourselves through this time, maybe we expect him to do that as well, given the years he's
Really
to
sell
do
off
it.
a business and asset at home. And
Yeah.
he's
Well,
fun.
and I think it's also important. They were married for about 20 years. I don't know how their separation comes into play. I don't know those facts, but they were married for 20 years. He, at least in California, he had an obligation to help take care of her. They've only been separated for about 2 years.
Interesting. So I love Robert De Niro, but I think I'm siding with Brooke a little bit. Is that he's been in the business since the 1970s. Apparently has amassed a lot of money, and he's going to be able to weather the storm better than most of us. I have a feeling when COVID's over with, there's going to be job opportunities for Robert De Niro, as long as he's healthy. So, Monet, tell us about your case.
So I'm doing Dr. Dre because I grew up with listening to a bunch of his music and a bunch of the people he produced. So he's getting a divorce from his wife, Nicole. And they've been married for like 24 years. They have 2 older kids, so there's no issues of child support. He's worth $800 million.
Oh my God.
He was worth billions, but if y'all remember, he sold 3 million of his Beats by Dre to Apple for $3 million. So he's now worth a little bit less. So only 800 million. And the biggest thing is she's asking for spousal support. Now, she is also an attorney. So I looked her up on CalBar to make sure that the rumors out there were true, and it is. She passed the bar, she has her own law practice. I don't know what she practices, but she's an attorney. And one of the rumors circulating is that they're going to try to settle this quickly and maybe get like a global settlement. Obviously, we're in California. This is a long-term marriage, so spousal support can be heavily litigated on both sides. And I think that if, he has to pay her a large sum amount, it's going to be something really large to encompass those 24 years of marriage. Another thing about Dr. Dre is, as we all know, he's had a long history of domestic violence, but none of that applied to his current wife, or rather soon-to-be ex-wife. He's never abused her, at least in the sense that we don't know about it. There's no restraining orders on that end, but he has had issues in the past with like reporters and people. Like there was this rapper who did a diss track on him in the 90s and he beat her, and he came out actually when they were filming his movie, and people criticized him. Why did you take the domestic violence issues that you had out? He had to come out with an interview and saying, I regret that. That's a stain on me. That's really stupid. I should have never done that. My wife has helped me through, being a better person. So and the reason that would be important is because of spousal support. Obviously, that affects spousal support if there's a violence in the history of the marriage. So that's interesting. They have a $40 million home in Brentwood. So and the biggest caveat is there's no prenup. So there's no prenup, and so it's gonna be.
He must have really loved this woman. Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. You say that he is worth $800 million. There's no prenuptial agreement. They've been married for 24 years, as I understand it. And then you tell me that she's a lawyer and she's still licensed with the state of California. Do you think that he may try to get like a vocational examination or something like that?
I mean,
let me say this for the audience. Trying to make the argument that, hey, she doesn't need my support. Here she is this lawyer. She's highly educated. She could get out there and fend for herself. So we're going to get somebody to find jobs for her. Do you think that that's going to happen in this case?
I think that if she's not performing, if she's not, because we see these cases in spousal support where someone is an attorney and then they lose income and the other person comes back and says, but you consistently made like, $180,000 a year. And then it's like this whole proving like my, profit and loss statement, and I'm losing clients and all of that. And so I think if she's purposefully not working and she has the ability to work, or she's underperforming, then he might go in and get a vocational examination on her end. But I also think another thing to consider is their kids are like 24 and 19 or so. So there's really not going to be an issue of custody or child support, he might just want to put it under the rug and pay her, you know, a couple of millions, which he clearly has, and just get it over.
A couple of millions? This guy's worth 800 million. Are you kidding me?
You know,
Stephanie, what do you think
you
about
know what I mean? A couple 30, 40 here and there.
And we're calling it a couple million.
If I'm representing wife, I would argue we need to maintain the marital standard of living, pay me my monthly support for an indefinite amount of time. That could equal more than a buyout right now.
No, I totally agree. Another fun fact is that her lawyer is Samantha Spector, who was representing Amber Heard at one point with the whole Johnny Depp debacle. So obviously they're going to get, like, you know, the attorneys involved, and, you know, hopefully it'll come to a mutual dissolution and they can kind of talk it out. But yeah, I agree with Steph. It's like, if you're talking about marital standard of living, that's like huge, because they have so much, and there's no prenup, and there's that whole, you know, he pretty much is producing everything right now. And she could argue, like, he's not even affected by COVID because he could just sit in the studio and produce music. Like, there's no issues of not working. So, you know, I mean, that's what I would argue. But.
Okay. Brooke, you got anything to add to this wonderful story?
No, I think they hit the nail on the head. I would definitely be arguing marital standard of living if I were representing her. I think it's an easier, I think it's not that hard of an argument to make if he's trying to say, you know, she needs to go back to being a lawyer and I just need to keep my $800 million to myself and she can figure it out. I don't know how persuasive that would be to the judge.
Well, my final thought about this case is that I don't care if she's a lawyer or not. If I was representing her, I'd say, go ahead and impute, you know, $150,000 to her. It ain't going to make any difference with regard to that spousal support order. Go ahead. You want to pay for I'll pay for the vocational counselor. Okay, let's just get it done, you know? So, okay. Well, so we had De Niro, Dr. Dre, and Stephanie, who did you have?
Kim and Kanye.
Oh my God, how could I forget about that? So I didn't. So anyways, this was really fun. Thank you, Stephanie. This was wonderful.
Thank you, Don.
Monet K, thank you.
My wonderful panelists.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Brooke, thank you for your comments.
Thank you. It's great.
Okay. And we'll try to do, I think this was fun. This was kind of an experiment, and we said ahead of time that we'd see how this would go. I think it was pretty cool. So we'll do this again. And thank you for joining us on Exhibit A. See you next time.